Welcome to the Aligned Powerhouse, the podcast for executive women who are done leading from burnout and ready to rise from alignment. I'm your host, Dr. Brittany McGeehan, licensed psychologist, high performance and mindset coach, and guide for high-achieving women who are ready to lead, live, and love without abandoning themselves. Here, we unpack the nervous system truths, mindset shifts, and emotional patterns that drive your leadership so you can build power from the inside out. Let's get into it. Alrighty, guys, I am super excited. In today's episode, I am talking about the 3 mindset shifts that you actually need to do the work that you say you want to do. I hear this all the time. Like today, I'm giving you behind the scenes of what happens on a discovery call and really what's happening in the first, I would say like week or 2 of coaching, because here's what I hear over and over again is that I know what I need to be doing. I just need to go and do it. I just need a little bit of accountability. And to an extent, this is true. To an extent, you do need accountability, but there's a lot of nuance that comes with this type of work when you want to reintegrate a new identity that is not wrapped up in pressure, when it is that pressure and it is the way you've performed under pressure that has led to your success and probably also caused you to be drawn to the people that you are in romantic relationship with. So let's dive in. The women that I work with are brilliant. Truly, I feel like they're number one fan. It is so easy. I don't know. I have the most phenomenal community of women that it is just such a gift, and men. But it is such a gift to be in relationship with these powerhouse, just phenomenal women who they want the vision, they want the business, they want to lead with their hearts. And they want a phenomenal marriage, and they want the healthy relationship with their children, and they want to get to know themselves better. I'm on such a soapbox, but I truly adore the women that I have the absolute privilege of getting to work with. They are so brilliant. And let me tell you, they've read the books. They've read the books and they continue to read the books. They bring the books to me on self-help, on what should the next step be as they're moving through this world, right? As they're navigating another season of change. They listen to the podcast. They are all about Mel Robbins, I think is the Let Them theory, right? They are all about Jay Shetty. They know the podcast. They know the shows. They have done the therapy. Always say I am no one's first therapist. I'm a little bit too quick to the point. You have to have some muscle before we work together. Intellectually, these women get it. They are quick. They are so fast. It's part of why I love working with them. But still something hasn't shifted, right? Hence, they are coming in, they're knocking on my door. And they know why they get anxious before hard conversations or a meeting or whatever it is. They know that their tendency is to overfunction. And they even know that this started in childhood, right? Usually they already have those dots pretty connected before we're working together. So they know the pattern, they understand the pattern, but they keep doing it anyway. This is the issue, okay? The reason for this, and the first mindset that I want to introduce here and that I want you to take a note of, is that insight is not integration. This is by far the hardest shift when I'm working with clients to really sort of have them surrender to, right? Insight is not integration. You can know your patterns, you can understand your patterns, and you can still be in an active relationship with them, right? Just because you understand your pattern doesn't mean that you're free of it. This is the number one trap that I see high-performing women fall into, because they think that if they understand, then they will be able to shift something. And maybe to an extent, they've been able to do that up until this point, right? They've been able to override their nervous system, override what their body is telling them, the sensations that are showing up in order to push the needle forward. But again, what got you here is not going to get you there. And if you truly want to break this cycle, something that is so deeply embedded in your system from childhood, from a very basic, primitive, survival-based area of your life, you need integration. You need nervous system work, okay? I once had a client who, she could explain her trauma, her history like a textbook. She read through it, right? There was disconnection from it, but had it all laid out. She could quote her favorite therapists, and authors of personal development that was under her belt. She had all of the things, and she was real quick about whipping it out when we were in session, and specifically when she got uncomfortable. Okay. But then her husband would get quiet in a conflict, and all of a sudden she would panic. She would lose access to this really fancy-dancy part of her brain called the prefrontal cortex that could make all of these amazing connections for her. She would lose access to it, and she would move into her limbic system, this fight or flight part of her nervous system, and it would feel like she was shutting down. Right? She would jump into overfunctioning mode, managing, fixing, proving, rescuing. Why? Because this is how she learned how to survive in childhood. And when you lose access to this really beautiful thing called a prefrontal cortex, you are going to default back to your survival mechanisms. If you haven't addressed the nervous system, if you haven't addressed the integration, the activation that is still being held in your body, then there's no way you can make a different decision, that you can change the behavior that you're moving from. This is why when I do work with people, we are addressing all of it. We are addressing the thoughts. We are addressing the history of how we got here. We are also addressing the nervous system. And then, yes, we are addressing changed behavior. So cool. I know this is unhealthy now. What do I do instead? Right? It takes more than a changed mind to change your behavior. The first step is to surrender to your history. Right? That's how we are going to get up in that nervous system. It takes more than intellectually understanding that, oh, now I'm safe. And my childhood was a little bit challenging. So if you are in a loop of knowing, yeah, I can do this, but I can't do this. I know this. I know I should be doing something different, but I just can't stop. That means that you are trying to white knuckle your healing, white knuckle your changed behavior, and you're not addressing the fact that you have a body, which is by far one of the most challenging things for my clients, is for them to realize, oh, I'm not just thoughts. I do not just exist in my mind. I do, in fact, also have a body. And if I do not listen to her, then she will scream at me and she will keep me in the same patterns. Right? We want to tend and befriend our body and listen to her. And when you do that, you can integrate and tend to the extra activation that takes place, or that is stored in your nervous system. And when you do that, you clear up space. Because here's the thing, guys. Insight is fantastic. I don't want to demonize that insight is not a part of this change. It absolutely is. But I always describe the nervous system as being a river. Okay. So water is running downhill and we have these boulders. Now, I want you to imagine the boulders upstream, they're bigger, right? Because things feel bigger, they feel heightened when you're younger because your prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. So everything is happening and it's getting stored up in the amygdala and the limbic system, right? Which is the very emotional part of our brain. So if you're looking at this little pebble that is down at the bottom of the river and you're saying, okay, I really want this water to flow freely, right? We want the energy in our body to flow freely from top to bottom so that that's the definition of aligned action. I want something, I'm going to go do it. The bridge to get from thought to behavior is the nervous system. The more easily energy flows back and forth between those two things, the easier it's going to be to move in aligned action and therefore build the life that you want, all of the things we're looking for, right? My work goes in and says, okay, what is getting in the way? of us knowing we're unhappy in this marriage, but also we're not feeling comfortable or we're not feeling safe going and asserting for what we want and what we need. I start at the top of the river with the really big boulders, which is childhood experiences. Okay. When you make it through, like moving the boulders out of the way, however you want to think about it, right? But that's the work that we do. Whenever you surrender to your story, you're going in and you eventually, like, you're knocking out that boulder, you're making more space for there to be flow between your thoughts and your behavior. Once you've done a lot of that work, this stuff doesn't come back. I'm not saying it's perfect, but what I'm saying is, like, once the boulder's been knocked out, it's been knocked out. At that point, and this is why I tell my clients we're building capacity, because at that point, when you are there, that is when insight moves into behavior like that. Because there's not a lot, there's no issue, there's nothing blocking the energetic flow down the river. And so instead, as soon as I change my mind, I can also change my behavior. But you got to go and address what is actually gunking up the nervous system in the first place. Okay. So insight is not integration. Mindset number 2 I want you to walk away with is that the problem is never the problem. If you've ever been in couples therapy, you've 100% heard this, but the problem isn't the problem. What we are talking about, what we think is the issue, is not the issue. Okay. The issue you think you're solving is never the actual problem that is underneath the hood. Usually it's a symptom. It's a messenger. It's a strategy. I had a client recently who came in order to work on her relationship with her daughter. She was feeling a lot of fear that her own unresolved business and some issues that were going on in her marriage were impacting her daughter, because her daughter was sending out like red flags, right? And what I told her was that your daughter is the messenger. She's ringing that alarm bell and she is saying there is something happening here. Lo and behold, we get into our work and we were addressing a lot of unresolved business with her dad. We were looking at unresolved dynamics within her marriage, and we were looking at her relationship with herself, her capacity to trust herself as CEO of this absolute Goliath of a company, right? What we think we're addressing is never the issue. This is also why every therapist, like every coach, all of us, we all need to be in our own therapy. We need to be doing our own work, because it's impossible to always see what the actual issue is. And you're going to be chasing your tail if you get wrapped up in your head and think that you can do that on your own. So when your business is feeling overwhelming and your partner feels distant, and when you snap at your kids for procrastinating on that one big thing, right? Like, those are surface level issues of a deeper pattern. And again, oftentimes it's the result of a nervous system that has made certain associations in order to keep you safe that are now running amok because you're no longer 5 years old, right? I once had a client who was convinced that her business was the issue, like the business itself, right? She said, like, it's just too much. And she would say, I picked the wrong model. I need to really restructure everything. Well, as we peeled back the layers, it didn't actually have anything to do with her business, which was performing quite well when we looked at the data. Okay. It was about the part of her that was equating rest with danger. So what happened was her business was actually doing so well that she didn't have as much to do. And when she couldn't get wrapped up in the crisis that was her business up until now, or what she perceived to be her business up until now, well, all of a sudden now I actually need to contend with the fact that I have an emotionally distant relationship with my children, and they're actually pretty pissed because I've been treating my business as if it was a 7th child and that kid's the favorite. I also have to deal with a marriage that I've been ignoring and that feels emotionally dead because I've been sticking my head in the sand over here, right? She was continuing to stay where she felt she was safe, which was a place where she could perform. Her family was no longer doing that. What she thought was the issue was not actually the issue. Okay, your nervous system is brilliant at creating strategies that protect you. That is its whole function. But sometimes those strategies are outdated, and no amount of surface level problem solving is going to touch the root until you rewire what is underneath. Okay. Third mindset shift I want you to bring in, because this is another big one, right? People come to me and they say, I don't want to feel triggered. I want to behave in a different way. I want to be doing this better. I want to be doing this faster. You need to know that triggers are invitations. They are not failures. So the moment when you lose your mind, when you feel like all of a sudden you're acting like a kid, and then you start beating yourself up, right? Like, we have been taught to associate quote unquote bad behavior with being just that, like being bad. And it somehow is like a reflection on who you are. But here's the thing, guys, is that behavior is just communication, and triggers are no different. So these moments when you start to feel small and self-conscious, or you start to get big and puffy because there's a very young piece of you that's online and is feeling rejected, right? This is feedback. This is feedback. It's not a bad thing. There will always, I very firmly believe that humans want to evolve. We want to feel better. We want to get better. We want to do better. We do this in different seasons, but in general, we want to evolve. It's part of the human experience. So for as long as that will be true in your life, there will be invitations to do that. I very firmly believe, like, the universe, the divine, all of it is helping to help us bring forth our vision for ourselves, right? Which is a more aligned, a happier, a more content, a more peaceful, someone who's more in acceptance, right? Fill in the blank. But all of those things, like, the universe is going to help us do that. Our psyche is going to help us do that. One of the really beautiful ways that it does that is with triggers. All a trigger says is, hey, there is something here that has not been fully resolved yet, and I'm ready to work on it now. Okay? So if you can approach that moment with curiosity instead of shame, instead of saying, oh, I just don't want to feel like this anymore, or like, oh, I don't know why I just lose my mind sometimes, right? Rather than, hey, what is this recreating? Who came online? What are they trying to tell me? What can I learn from this? Right? And really approach it as an opportunity to understand yourself more deeply. So to meet this younger, older version of you who didn't have the tools, who didn't have the support, you have the opportunity to step in as that support system, as that support person for this younger version of yourself. You want to talk about building a limitless mindset, capacity that is unparalleled, that you truly get to decide what it is, then go in and become your own source of support. Go in and become someone that you can count on at the end of the day. And then, the world is at your fingertips, okay? So I'm not saying this is easy, but I'm saying that I've seen women move from repeating cycles over and over and over again of emotional reactivity to creating powerful shifts in their marriage, their parenting, their leadership, the way they show up at work, just by learning how to stay with themselves when they are activated, not shaming themselves, not shutting down, not going and criticizing and breaking it all down, but just meeting this moment with curiosity. That is what change looks like. Knowledge that this isn't a bad thing to have a response. It's not a bad thing to not be perfect. It simply makes me human. And it's an invitation to get to know myself more deeply. That is the thing that truly moves the needle forward. Okay. So again, seeing insight as the start, not the end, learning to recognize your nervous system strategies and treating your triggers like teachers are what separate people who know a lot from people who actually know different. I'm not interested in having a bigger, more robust knowledge base than the people around me, right? I'm interested in being in the arena, as Brene Brown talks about. Like, I want to be with the women who want to be in the arena, getting vulnerable and showing up for themselves in bigger ways. Like, that's what I'm interested in. That's what lights me up and I get really excited about. And if you are in a place where you're ready for deeper work, not just to understand the patterns, not just to make the connections, but to actually live and move differently, then I would love to walk with you through that. So you can start with my free webinar on the trust methodology, which actually teaches you to interrupt the pattern real time, right? 5-step process, super easy. This is the process that I am teaching my clients, and I am reiterating over and over and over again because it is the actual system that you can go in and work when you notice your little is activated and online and you want to become that person who can come in and support them, right? Become this trusted figure for this little inside of you. So highly recommend you join the next one. Come learn this system and start doing this stuff real time. Okay. I would be honored to help support you in that process because you deserve a lot more than insight and connections. You deserve actual freedom. Alrighty, friend, that is all for today's episode of the Aligned Powerhouse Podcast. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. And do me a favor, if this episode resonated, I want you to share it with another powerhouse woman in your life who is ready to lead and love from a place of self-trust. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, and leave a quick rating or review. It really does help more women find this work. New episodes drop every week. Until then, lead with self-trust and let yourself be seen.